जय श्री श्री गुरु गौरांगगंधा विकगिरिधारी श्री श्री राधा विनोद बिहारी जू की जय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन जू की जय। नित्याल विष्णु विष्णुपाद शुतर शत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। नित्याल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्याल विष्णु विष्णुपार शुतर शत शिशुमार भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जाय। नित्याल विष्णु विष्णुपार शुतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जाय। नित्याल विष्णु विष्णुपार शुतर शत शिशुमार भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जाय। नित्याल विष्णु महाभगवत श्री गोक्षर बाबाजी महाराज की जाय। नित्याल विश्व शिल सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नित्याल विष्णु वैष्णव सार्वभौम शिल जगन्नाथ दास बाबाजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूपानुगौर्य गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय। नाम जय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड यमुना गंगा तुलसी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जय श्री भक्ति तत्व विवेक की जय। जय श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। वृंदा अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। श्रीसिद्धान्तसरस्वतीति विदितो गौरीय गौर्वन्वये भातो भानुरिव प्रभातगगने यो गौरसङ्कीर्तनाय मायावारतिमिङ्गिलोदरगतान् उद्धृत्य जीवनिमान् कृष्णप्रेमसुधाब्धिगाहनसुखां परादात्प्रभुं तं भजे। वन्दे भक्तिविनोदं श्री गौरशक्तिस्वरूपकं भक्तिशास्त्रज्ञसम्राजन् राधारससुधानिधिं। नमो भक्तिविनोदाय सच्चिदानन्दनामिने गौरशक्तिस्वरूपाय रूपानुगवराय ते। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वञ्चाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। वृषभानुसुतान्वितवामतनुं यमुनातटनागरनन्दसुतं मुरलीकलगीतविनोरपरं भज गोद्रुमकाननकुञ्जविदुं। स्मर गौरगदाधरकेलिकलं भवगौरगदाधरपक्षचर शृणु गौरगदाधर चारुकथां भज गोद्रुमकाननकुञ्जविदुं। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय देवी त्वां नायमां चरणान्तिकाम्। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताश्च कामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वां शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrindam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Dandavat Pranams, Nri Hari Prabhu, Bhavatarani Mataji, Chatamai Mataji, Krishna Mai Didi, Anadi Krishna Prabhu, Prajumna Prabhu, Mantramurti Mataji, Vrinda Didi, Vangshiwala Prabhu. I'm guessing Raseshri Mataji and Indira Mataji are there. And all the other devotees, if you write a comment, I'll see your name. Maybe my brother is there, Krishna Murari. Dandavat Pranams, everybody. So, we are continuing our reading of Bhakti-tattva-viveka. Yesterday we finished the first chapter on explaining what is bhakti, what is the intrinsic defining characteristic of bhakti, and what are the other distinguishing characteristics that are not intrinsic to bhakti, but that like comparing it to different things. So that's called the Tatastha Lakshan. And now, today, we are going to be reading about things that look like bhakti, but aren't bhakti. A semblance of bhakti. So it's called the Bhakti-ābhāsa. Bhakti-ābhāsa. Haribol, brother. Just a message. Okay. Oh, and just I always make too many disclaimers, but anyhow, sometimes when I'm just talking off the cuff, often when I'm talking off the cuff like that, I say stuff, and then afterwards, after the video, I'm like, wait a second, what I said was not really right on. It's pretty kind of off, and I did that yesterday when we were Vidyalala Sadidi asked something about Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, that verse from Bhagavad Gita. And for some reason, I don't know why, but I went off on Nishkam Karma Yoga, maybe because I was already on that track, like my mind was on that track about something else. But that verse is directly about bhakti. I mean, it even has bhakti in the verse, bhaktya, right? Like that's bhakti in the instrumental case. Like it's that verse is definitely about bhakti, and so it's in the chapter about bhakti, and it's a verse that all of our acharyas use about bhakti. So I don't know why I was talking about Nishkam Karma Yoga, but anyhow, I just whenever I talk like that, always, don't take anything I say as completely authoritative or anything like that. Sometimes what I say might be in line with what our acharyas say, and sometimes when I'm just getting creative and stuff, I might just go off track. And yeah, I always be careful with what I say. Don't quote me or anything like that. All right. So I'm just sharing the screen, and I'm reading this all for the first time with you. So I'm not teaching it, I'm learning it with you. This is like my first time, I read Bhakti-tattva-viveka many years ago, and so but right now it's all fresh for me, everything that we're reading. Okay. At the beginning of each chapter, Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura, he writes his own Sanskrit Mangalacharan verse based on the chapter. Kind of like in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Śrīla Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami did that, right? At the beginning of each chapter, there's a Sanskrit verse, which is the Mangalacharan for the chapter. So this is the Mangalacharan for this verse. For this chapter. This is chapter 2, an analysis of the semblance of bhakti. And this is how Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura, this is how he presents. First, we should understand what is bhakti. In the most general way, we need to understand what is bhakti, and in that verse, actually, it does indirectly explain what is not bhakti, what appears to be bhakti but is not bhakti. explain, right? In that verse, Anyabhilasha Shunyam, Jnana Karma Dhyanapratam. Those two lines explain kind of Bhakti-abhāsa also, indirectly. But then once we know, okay, this is what bhakti is. It's the cultivation of the activities of the mind, body, and words with your sentiments and actions for the benefit of Krishna. Only wanting Krishna's happiness, ultimate happiness. And so that is bhakti. But then we might delude ourselves thinking that we're engaging in bhakti because externally everything seems, I'm chanting, I'm hearing, I'm doing all the different activities of bhakti. I'm using my propensities in Krishna service, and it really, like in every way it seems like bhakti. But it could very well not be bhakti at all. And so that's what this chapter is going to clarify for us. What is the things that we think are bhakti but are not bhakti? Yad bhaktyabhasaleshopi tadati phalam uttamam tam ananda nidhim Krishna chaitanyam samupasmahe. Oh, and I know, sorry, I'm not gonna. So we worship Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who is an ocean of transcendental bliss. Even a faint trace of devotion unto him yields the highest result. Wow, that's very interesting, huh? Even a faint trace of devotion unto him yields the highest result. My dear devotees, in the previous chapter, we discussed the intrinsic nature, the swarup, and extrinsic characteristics, the tatastha lakshan of bhakti. In this chapter, we will discuss Bhakti-ābhāsa, the semblance of devotion. We have already discussed a little about Bhakti-ābhāsa while reviewing the tatastha lakshan of bhakti. Those two first lines of the verse, Anyabhilasha-tashunyam jnana karma dhyanapratam. And indeed, Bhakti-ābhāsa is actually included within the category of tatastha lakshan of bhakti. But since it is not really suitable for the semblance of devotion to be thoroughly analyzed in a section where both the intrinsic and extrinsic characteristics of bhakti are being described, it has become necessary to write a separate chapter on the topic of Bhakti-ābhāsa. It's a different topic. We hope that this article will serve to further clarify the subject matter of the previous chapter. Okay, so this is further clarifying what does it mean by Anyabhilasha-tashunyam and Jnana Karma Adi Anavratam. It has already been stated that the natural and unadulterated endeavor of the infinitesimal consciousness, the jiva, towards the complete consciousness, Krishna, is called bhakti. Okay, so jivas are situated in two stages, the liberated stage and the conditioned stage. In the liberated stage, the living entity is free from all varieties of material relationships, and the jiva is situated in his pure constitutional position. In such a stage, the jiva remains free from any material designation, and hence, within him, there is no opportunity for the marginal characteristics of bhakti to exist. In the conditioned stage, the jiva forgets his constitutional identity as his spiritual intelligence is diluted by the coverings of the subtle and gross bodies. In this stage, the jiva acquires various material designations. right? I am Madhukar. I was born in America. I like to do this. This is my family. This is my friends. This is my blah blah blah. Like all these conceptions of I and mine. These are all material designations. When a mirror is free from dust, it gives a clear reflection of any object. But when it is covered with dust, it does not give a clear reflection. In such a condition, we can say that the mirror has acquired a designation. When something covers the nature, the swabhav of an object, then that covering is called the object's designation. Material nature covers the pure constitutional nature of the jiva, and that covering is the jiva's designation. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:2-37. Bhayang dvitiya bhiniveshatasyad ishad apetasya viparyayo smriti tanmaya yato buddha abhajetang bhaktya kaesham gurudeva tatma. My Srila Gurudev wrote a whole book, a little booklet. Well, I mean, he gave a bunch of classes and he wanted it to be turned into a book on this verse. So the jiva's innate tendency of unalloyed devotion towards the complete consciousness, Bhagavan Shri Krishna, is his eternal occupational duty, his nitya dharma. When the same jiva becomes opposed to Bhagavan, then he is gripped by fear and his intelligence is lost. Maya is the external potency of Bhagavan, the apara shakti. Considering the existence of this material world, which has manifested from the external potency to be an independent element from Bhagavan, the unfortunate living entity falls into material existence. Intelligent people, accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master, engage themselves in the exclusive bhajan of the Supreme Lord, Shri Hari. Haribol Gokuleshwari Didi. From the verse on the previous page, we can conclude that the living entity's absorption in the material energy, Maya Abhinivesh, the living entity's absorption in the material energy imposes a false designation upon him. In such an adulterated stage, the devotion of the living entity easily deteriorates and appears as Bhakti-ābhāsa. Those who desire nothing other than entrance into unalloyed devotion should completely cross over Bhakti-ābhāsa and take shelter of Kevala Bhakti, exclusive and uninterrupted devotion. For this reason, we are reviewing the topic of Bhakti-ābhāsa in greater detail. I'm just, like, what is it? This is how I'm understanding it right now. But when we engage, like, there are all these different coverings over our soul. This, like, and they're called, all these coverings of over our soul, all these material coverings, are called designations, are upadis. And so we have these different designations of, what I think I am and what is mine, all these different, and so when we are acting according to those false designations, these temporary designations that we have, this is my mother, this is my father, this is my name, this is who I'm like, this is my personality, all these different things, when we're acting in that way, then what we're doing is Bhakti-ābhāsa, when we're acting according to our material designation. But then the more we can connect with who we really are, I am an eternal servant of Krishna, and we start to understand our relationship, our sambandha, and then we're acting on that. The more purely we act on that platform, free from these material designations, these upadis, then that is bhakti. This in-depth analysis of the semblance of devotion is extremely confidential. Only intimate devotees are qualified to hear it. This is because those who consider Bhakti-ābhāsa to be bhakti will never be pleased upon reading this book until they become truly fortunate. Yeah, if you're attached to thinking what you're doing is bhakti, then you're not going to be happy when you read this. What? You mean all these things that I'm doing is not bhakti? No. Yeah. But if you become truly fortunate, then you will become pleased upon hearing all this. So I'm feeling immense pleasure in presenting this topic before the intimate devotees. Because Srila Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura is actually doing, he feels immense pleasure in explaining what is really bhakti and what we think is bhakti but it isn't. So Srila Rupa Goswami has not given a separate analysis of Bhakti-ābhāsa in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Within the first half of the verse, Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhanavartam, he has given a complete yet hidden explanation of Bhakti-ābhāsa. While discussing the topic of Rati-ābhāsa, the semblance of ecstatic spiritual emotion, in his review of the principle of Rati, Srila Rupa Goswami has nicely explained Bhakti-ābhāsa. But wait, that's in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, isn't it? His explanation of Rati-ābhāsa? Huh. I wonder if this is meant to say, like, in analysis of Bhakti-ābhāsa in this section of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu where he's explaining the verse Anyabhilashita Shunyam? I don't know. Anyhow. But yeah, Srila Rupa Goswami does explain Bhakti-ābhāsa while discussing the topic of Rati-ābhāsa. I am presenting this deliberation on the semblance of devotion upon the basis of Srila Rupa Goswami's conception. Bhakti-ābhāsa, in Sanskrit, you'd normally make this I a Y. It'd be Bhakti-ābhāsa. But we're just breaking up the sandhi to make it really easy to understand. So that's why it's Bhakti-ābhāsa. So Bhakti-ābhāsa exists prior to the stage of Shuddha Bhakti. From Bhakti-ābhāsa, the stages of unalloyed devotion and Rati, from Bhakti-ābhāsa, the stages of unalloyed devotion and Rati within unalloyed devotion appear in sequence. Srila Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.3.45, Pratibimba-stata chaya ratyabhaso dvida mata. There are two types of Bhakti-ābhāsa, Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa and Chaya Bhakti-ābhāsa. The difference between the two is that Pratibimba remains apart from the original object and appears as another separate entity, while Chaya is completely dependent on the original object, and from a position of proximity to it, it appears as a partial manifestation of the original object. Okay, so there are two things. Bhakti-ābhāsa is divided into two. There is Pratibimba and there is Chaya. Pratibimba means a reflection and Chaya means a shadow. And so a reflection is not connected in any way to the thing that's being reflected. But a shadow is connected to the thing that's it's in proximity and connected to the thing it's a shadow of. And so that's the difference. There's Pratibimba, a reflection semblance of bhakti, and there's a shadow semblance of bhakti. Pratibimba Chaya. When a tree is reflected in water, the tree that is visible in the water is called the Pratibimba, or reflection of the original tree. The reflection is never in touch with the original object. The existence of the reflection is due solely to the existence of the original object. Still, the reflection is accepted as a separate entity, has no connection with the original object. It's a completely separate entity. The form that appears because now the form that appears because of the tree's blockage on the path of light, and that resembles the form of the tree, itself, is called the chaya, or shadow. The existence of the chaya is entirely dependent upon the original object. Śrīla Jiva Goswami says, Tasman nirupaditvam eva rater mukhya sarupatvam supadhitvam abhasatvam tattva gonya vritya pravartamanatvam iti. So this means that when bhakti is unadulterated, it is sarup bhakti. It's bhakti in its own completely pure, perfect, inherent, true form. That's devotion in its intrinsic state. But when bhakti is adulterated, then it is called Bhakti-ābhāsa. Okay, so let's connect to the Sanskrit here. It says, Tasman nirupaditvam. Upadi, so no designation, or here it's translated as unadulterated. So it's completely pure. There's an understanding of your pure nature. I am an eternal servant of Krishna. I am not this temporary body, and these aren't my, it's pure. There's no designation, unadulterated. When you're performing bhakti like that, then that bhakti is called Sarup Bhakti. It's the bhakti in its intrinsic perfect state. But when bhakti is adulterated, let's see, and that's the okay. Then sa upaditvam. So when there is this upadi, these material designations of I and mine and all that, then the bhakti is abhas. It's just a semblance of bhakti. It's not real bhakti. And this Bhakti-ābhāsa is manifested by the gona vritti. That means the secondary inclination of the living entity. Okay. Hey, this part is missing in the translation, right? Mukhya. One is Mukhya Swarupam and the other one is Gona Vritya. I think. Anyways, whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay. Just that word mukhya is missing, but it does say it is Swarup Bhakti. Okay. Bhakti-ābhāsa is manifested by the gona vritti, the secondary inclination of the living entity. The living entity's intrinsic inclination is called the mukhya vritti, and the inclination that is obstructed or covered is called the gona vritti. Okay, it doesn't explain it. It's just explained it in more words. This mukhya and gona. Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa and Chaya-bhakti-ābhāsa are both categorized as gona vritti, or secondary tendencies. When bhakti reaches its pure form, it is completely free from the tendencies of pratibimba, the reflection, and chaya, the shadow. At that time, only the original object itself, pure spontaneous devotion, is manifest. Okay, so now let's hear about Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa. And just, and Haribol Rohini Nandan Prabhu. And Ashray Tattva Prabhu, Hare Krishna. And it's kind of, it's clear, right? Oh, well, it's becoming even more clear, but Pratibimba is not good. Because Pratibimba is something that looks like bhakti, but so externally it looks like bhakti, but there's not even a connection with bhakti. It's completely far away and separate from bhakti. No connection at all. It's just fake, it's fraudulent. And then Chaya Bhakti-ābhāsa, the shadow, at least the shadow has some connection with the object of bhakti, and it's connected to bhakti. It's not bhakti, but at least there's some connection with bhakti. But Pratibimba has no connection with bhakti whatsoever. It's just a mirage. It's completely fake. And so, one's really bad, one's like a step in the right direction. At least this is my understanding. So, let's see. Okay, so Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa. The semblance of devotion, known as Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa, can be divided into three categories. 1. Nirvishesh Jnana Vritta Bhakti-ābhāsa. 2. Bahirmukh Karma Vritta Bhakti-ābhāsa. And 3. Viparit Vastu Bhakti Buddhi Janita Bhakti-ābhāsa. Okay, so now number 1. First, Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa. In Nirvishesh Jnana Vritta Bhakti-ābhāsa, and the meaning, the meaning of the Sanskrit here is this semblance of bhakti that is avritta, that is covered by nirvishesh jnana. So in this bhakti, which is semblance of bhakti, which is covered by nirvishesh jnana, bhakti remains hidden by a covering of impersonal knowledge, nirvishesh jnana. At that time, a curtain of impersonal knowledge exists. A curtain of impersonal knowledge exists between the sadhak and Swarup Siddha Bhakti, making direct realization of bhakti in its inherent form impossible. And you understand the meaning of Swarup Siddha Bhakti, right? Swarup, intrinsically, Siddha means perfected bhakti. Let's see, how does it? All favorable endeavors such as... So Swarup Siddha Bhakti is just... It's another way of saying pure bhakti. Shuddha Bhakti, Uttama Bhakti, Swarup Siddha Bhakti. It's completely in the intrinsic perfect form of bhakti. Anyways, you get it. So, so at the time of impersonal knowledge, at that time when bhakti is covered by nirvishesh jnana, then there's a curtain of impersonal knowledge that exists between the sadhak and Swarup Siddha Bhakti, making direct realization of bhakti in its inherent form impossible. The conception of impersonal knowledge is that within transcendental reality, within Chit Tattva, names, forms, qualities, pastimes, and other attributes do not exist. According to this philosophy, these attributes exist only in material objects. When the jiva becomes liberated from material existence, he merges into undifferentiated Brahman. Wherever such impersonal knowledge exists, unalloyed devotion cannot manifest there. Krishnanushilanam, the cultivation of devotion unto Sri Krishna, is called Shuddha Bhakti. But the activities of bhakti are not possible in impersonal liberation because neither Krishna, his servant, the living entity, nor devotional endeavors are present. If someone believes that when the perfectional stage of liberation is achieved, if someone believes that when the perfectional stage of liberation is achieved, then bhakti no longer exists due to the destruction of the mind, body, and false ego, but simultaneously they continue to follow the process of bhakti to achieve such perfection, then how can their devotion to Krishna be called eternal and free from deceit? They just think that once I reach perfection, then everything's going to disappear. Bhakti will disappear because bhakti is connected to the mind, body, and false ego and all that. And so how can you say that's eternal? No, they think it's just temporary, something bhakti is to be discarded once you attain perfection, once you merge into Brahman. Such a person tries to please Krishna for the time being, and in the end attempts to extinguish Krishna's existence. In precisely the same way, the demon Vrikasura pleased Lord Shiva with his worship, and after obtaining a boon from Shiva, that he could kill anyone by merely placing his hands on their head, he tried to kill Shiva himself. So you're using all this stuff, you're worshiping Krishna, and like with love, it's all about loving Krishna and everything. But then your aim in doing that is to say that Krishna, you don't even exist, Krishna. It's like, so it's like it's like demoniac. The devotion of such a person is deceitful and temporary due to his ignorance of the intrinsic nature of eternally perfected devotion, Nitya Siddha Bhakti. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.3.44 and verse 46, Srila Rupa Goswami has defined the attributes of such deceitful bhakti, chala bhakti. So, Kintu bala chamatkara kari tachchinna vikshaya abhigena subodhoyang ratyabhasa prakirtita ashramabhishta nirvahi rati lakshana lakshita bhogapavarga sokyangsha vyanjaka pratibimba-bhakti. By observing the symptoms of shedding tears and trembling in persons who desire material enjoyment and liberation, it may seem that they have developed Krishna Rati, ecstatic emotion based on excessive attachment for Krishna. But only foolish people who are easily influenced by a show of external symptoms will consider such so-called Rati genuine. Those who are knowledgeable, they know it to be Rati-ābhāsa. Such a person's trembling and shedding of tears are due to two reasons. The first reason is that they have a hankering for impersonal liberation, and by remembering Krishna, who alone can award such mukti, they feel great pleasure. This pleasure is the cause of their shedding tears and trembling. It is not due to spontaneous love for Krishna. They're just feeling like, oh, I'm not going to have to suffer anymore. And like this feeling of liberation. But there's nothing about, Krishna is going to be happy and any love for Krishna. It's all selfish. The second reason for their shedding tears and trembling is the happiness derived from thinking that simply by the performance of such bhakti-ābhāsa, their inner desires for material enjoyment will be easily fulfilled. And now this is, that was what? That was Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in the first section, Eastern Division, 3rd chapter, verses 44 and 46. And now this verse is 47 to 48. So these are the next two verses. Varanasi nivasi kashchid ayang vyaharam harishcharitam yati goshtyam utpulaka sinchati kandadvai masrai. Sorry, I messed that verse up. Once in the city of Varanasi, a renunciate was chanting the names of Hari in an assembly of sannyasis, and eventually he began trembling and tears started flowing from his eyes. While chanting the holy name, he was thinking, aha, by such a simple process, I will attain impersonal liberation. Srila Rupa Goswami describes the cause of such a condition in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, verses 47 to 48. Sorry, these are the next two verses. Daivatsar Bhakta Sangena. Sorry, so that was Srila Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura writing, yeah. And now these are the next two verses of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Daivatsar Bhakta Sangena Kirtanadhyanusarinam Praya Prasanna Manasang Bhogo Mokshadi Raginam Keshanchid Hridi Bhavendho Pratibimba Udanchati Tar Bhaktya Hrinnabhastasya Tat Samsarga Prabhavata. Exhibiting such trembling and shedding of tears is not easy for an impersonalist, because knowledge and renunciation make the heart hard and push away all the symptoms of bhakti, which is very tender by nature. Even though in the process of hearing and shravan and chanting and kirtan conducted by the impersonalists, the disease of the desires for sense gratification and liberation exists, they still feel a little pleasure in their hearts from the performance of Shravan and Kirtan. If at such a time, by some good fortune, they obtain the association of a pure devotee of Bhagavan, then by the effect of that association, the bhav that has arisen, like the moon in the sky of the hearts of pure devotees, is reflected even in their hearts, which are contaminated by the impersonal conception. Such an occurrence can sometimes cause a little ecstasy and shedding of tears. But when again they lack the association, they lack the association of such a devotee, they deride the tears and trembling of their own disciples as fraud or cheating. Hence, bhakti can never appear in the heart covered by impersonal knowledge, but sometimes there is the appearance of bhakti-ābhāsa. Okay, so that was the first type of Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa, which is covered by nirvishesh jnana. Now the second type, it's called Bahir-mukh karma vritta bhakti-ābhāsa. In Bahir-mukh karma vritta bhakti-ābhāsa, a blockage comprised of an external covering of fruit of activity, karma, is produced by the secondary tendency, the guna vritti of bhakti. Okay, so the first is covered by nirvishesh jnana, the second is covered by Bahir-mukh karma, or fruit of activity that is completely directed away from Krishna. It just directed only towards the external energy, Maya. It is as if a curtain of fruit of activity is present between the relisher, the living entity, and that which is to be relished, bhakti. This curtain covers the intrinsic nature of bhakti. Pursuing the path of mystic yoga and strictly adhering to the occupational duties corresponding to one's caste and stage of life, varnashram dharma, are both classified as karma. Karma is of two types. Okay, anyways, so that's interesting though. Pursuing the path of mystic yoga is included within karma, and also strictly following one's varnashram dharma. This is also classified as karma. So karma is of two types. There's nitya karma, that's activities performed regularly, and naimittika karma, that's activities performed occasionally. All actions that result in piety are considered karma, fruit of activity. A detailed explanation of karma here would greatly enlarge this presentation. Those who specifically want to understand the concept of karma may read the initial pages of my book, Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita. The process of karma delineated in the books of the Smarta Brahmins is all superficial activity. Activities such as Sandhya Vandan, prayers to be recited daily at dusk, that are suitable for the proper execution of one's varnashram duties, and that are mentioned in the books of the Smartas, these are all called nitya karma, or daily routine activities. The Smartas consider the performance of these daily activities to be bhakti. Yet an in-depth review of these activities will reveal that they are superficial. The symptoms of bhakti that are visible in them are due merely to Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa and not real bhakti. This is because the desired fruit of these activities is either the attainment of impersonal liberation or the pleasure of this world, or the heavenly planet, or the heavenly worlds. Some people consider the limbs of bhakti, such as hearing and chanting, to be karma, and the hearing and chanting of the karma yoga process to be bhakti. These misconceptions are caused by their ignorance of the proper philosophical conception. Although externally there appear to be many similarities between the processes of karma yoga and sadhana bhakti, there exists a fundamental difference between the two. Whatever action is performed to attain mundane happiness in this world or in the heavenly worlds is called karma. This happiness is classified as either sense gratification or relief from suffering in the form of impersonal liberation. And I think when you do Govardhan Parikrama, and you see so many people from all over doing Govardhan Parikrama, from different villages in India, people coming from all over to do. Or if you go to like Radha Govinda Mandir in Jaipur, and you see so many people doing the daily arti and singing the kirtans, and they're singing. I think a majority of the people are doing it with an aim for, either wanting auspiciousness in their life, to maybe, and to have opulence in this life, have a nice house and money and all these different things for their family members and all that, or even for in their next life going to the heavenly planets, or they're either doing it for, wanting liberation, moksha, and like that. And so this is all pratibimba. It looks like they're doing bhakti. They're doing all the same chanting with, singing and all that, and are doing parikrama and all these different things, but their aim is not to, to serve Krishna eternally in their constitutional form as a servant of Krishna. So that's why. So this happiness is classified either as sense gratification or relief from suffering in the form of impersonal liberation. On the other hand, bhakti is the action performed with absorption in those sentiments which only help to increase our natural inborn inclination for love of Krishna, and where the performer has no other desire whatsoever. They don't mind if they're even born in hell for a million lifetimes. It doesn't matter. They don't care about anything for themselves, but they just want to love Krishna. They want Krishna's happiness. No other desire. Despite accruing some other fruits by the performance of such activity, the performer considers those fruits to be very insignificant. Those acts which nourish unalloyed devotion are also considered bhakti, because bhakti alone is the mother of bhakti. The process of jnana and karma can never be capable of producing bhakti. My dear intimate devotees, you cannot satisfy the people engaged in gross activities by presenting before them the subtle difference between karma yoga and bhakti. Only when their faith in the process of karma and jnana dwindles by the accumulation of heaps of pious activities and by the effect of association with pure devotees of Bhagavan, only then will the seedling of undeveloped bhakti appear in the hearts in the form of faith. Unless in possession of such faith, no one can understand the subtle difference between karma yoga and bhakti. We should understand that if someone thinks that bhakti is simply another form of karma, then he won't be able to relish the transcendental sentiments of unalloyed devotion in his heart. The difference between bitter and sweet can be distinguished only by tasting them, not by reasoning. Yeah, if you've never had anything bitter before and you've never had anything sweet before, then you can't understand what the difference is between them. By explanation, you have to actually taste it, and then you're like, oh, that's what bitter means. Oh, and that's what sweet means. And then you can, after actually tasting them, it becomes much easier to consider and then determine which of them is superior. Those inclined towards karma yoga sometimes dance, tremble, and shed tears while chanting the holy name. But all of this is a mere reflection of bhakti. It's a mere reflection of bhakti. It is not Shuddha bhakti. It is the result of their previous good fortune of having associated with devotees, as described in the verses quoted previously on page 34, such as Daivat Sad Bhakta Sangena. Their trembling and shedding of tears are just symptoms produced by sensual pleasure and are considered mere reflections, pratibimba only. At such times they are either immersed in thoughts of heavenly pleasure, or they are absorbed in an imaginary ocean of the pleasure derived from liberation. This is Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa. Okay, now we come to the third type of Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa. The first is covered by Nirvishesh Gyan. The second is covered by activity directed away from Krishna towards the material energy, fruit of activities, pious acts, and all that. And now we come to number 3, which is, let's see. In present times, we can easily point out Viparit Vastu Bhakti Buddhi Janita Bhakti-ābhāsa. And what is that? It is produced by the visualization of bhakti in activities that are actually opposed to bhakti, and which is prevalent in the panchopasana and in the Ishwar pranidhana, concentration upon the supersoul within the yoga process. Okay, so this is the process of yoga. Those known as panchopasana, it should be panchopasak, right? Anyways, those known as panchopasaks, I think, anyways, they consider that there are 5 sampradayas. There's a Shaiva, worshippers of Shiva, Shakta, worshippers of Durga, Ganapatya, worshippers of Ganesh, Sora, that's worshippers of Surya, the sun god, and Vaishnavas, worshippers of Vishnu. All 5 are followers of impersonalism. The Vaishnav line mentioned here is not the Vaishnav line that follows the genuine principle of bhakti. The 4 genuine Vaishnav sampradayas are not included within the Vaishnav Panchopasana sampradaya mentioned here. Okay, so there's a 5th type of Vaishnav, which is not one in any of the 4 sampradayas. They're different kind of. So Sri Ramanujacharya, Sri Madhvacharya, Sri Vishnu Swami, and Sri Nimbaditya are the 4 acharyas of the 4 bona fide sampradayas of unalloyed devotion that are described in the verse Sri Brahma Rudra Shanakash Chatvara Sampradayina. I think it was written by Baladevi Jibhushan, was it? I think so, I don't know. To indicate these 4 sampradayas, it is said in the scriptures, Sampradaya Vihinaye Mantraste Nishvala Mata. This means that mantras not accepted from the 4 bona fide sampradayas yield no results. Might yield material results, but it doesn't yield bhakti results, which is the only thing that's meaningful. So yeah, they yield no results if you take initiation which is not in one of the 4 sampradayas. Vaishnavas who belong to the Panchopasana section are basically impersonalists, not pure devotees. All the Panchopasaks believe that the murtis of their 5 worshipable deities are ultimately imaginary. In other words, they believe that Brahman has no form, and that these forms are conceived only as a convenience for worship, while still in the bodily conception of life. According to their concept, when one's worship becomes perfect, he merges into impersonal Brahman, and the devotion he offered to those imaginary murtis, whom he considers to be the supreme, is not eternal. This activity is simply jnana vritta bhakti-ābhāsa, devotion that is covered by impersonal knowledge. One cannot attain unalloyed devotion as long as he believes such semblance of devotion to be real bhakti. If symptoms of bhakti such as trembling and the profuse shedding of tears are detected in the performers of this type of bhakti-ābhāsa, they should be taken only as symptoms produced by sensual pleasure and a mere reflection, a pratibimba, of the genuine symptoms. I see it's just 1 minute till 8. I think we're finished with this, almost. Let's just see, okay. Just as the Panchopasaks display a semblance of devotion towards their imaginary deities of demigods, similarly, yogis also display trembling and shedding of tears towards their imaginary deity of the Supersoul. These are all examples of Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa. The concept that Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa will gradually develop and ultimately transform into unalloyed devotion is totally false, because by rejecting impersonal meditation and the benefits sought from fruitive activities, the existence of this semblance of devotion totally vanishes. There remains no possibility of those practicing Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa actually being benefited, unless they completely purify their consciousness from its very root. Impersonalists such as the 4 Kumaras and the topmost Jnani Shukadeva Goswami could only begin new and more exalted lives when they completely renounced their previous faiths and accepted the path of bhakti. By the strength of their new exalted lives, they achieved the status of our acharyas. So it's never that the Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa turns into something pure. No, it's only that you have to reject everything that you believed, and then you start completely from the beginning, anew, fresh. And then, it can't turn into it. It can be rejected like that, like what the four Kumaras and Shukadeva Goswami did. Regarding Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa, Śrīla Rupa Goswami says, and actually it's 8 o'clock, so we'll stop here, but let's just read the translation. We'll reread this tomorrow. But Śrīla Rupa Goswami says regarding Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa, how is it possible for the rare Bhagavad Bhakti, ecstatic emotion for Bhagavan that appears in the stage of Bhav, to appear in the hearts of those desiring material sense gratification and impersonal liberation, when such rati is being eagerly sought after by liberated souls who have completely renounced all varieties of material desires, and is not easily granted by Sri Krishna to those engaged in his exclusive bhajan. It's not even easily granted by Sri Krishna to those engaged in his exclusive devotion. So how can somebody who is, engaging in this kind of Pratibimba Bhakti-ābhāsa attain anything? It's even difficult for those who are engaged in his exclusive devotion. It is imperative to mention here that those who consider the pleasure derived from illicit association with women and taking intoxication to be love of God are themselves polluted and may pollute others also. Okay, so that's the end of Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa. Tomorrow we will read about Chaya Bhakti-ābhāsa. And we'll do a little recap of what we read today, tomorrow also. Let's just read this first 2 sentences. It says, it is very important for a sadhak to understand Chaya Bhakti-ābhāsa. Unlike Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa, Chaya Bhakti-ābhāsa is not crooked and shrewd. It has simplicity and virtue. So we'll hear about this Chaya Bhakti-ābhāsa tomorrow. All right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. One thing I'm not totally clear on was the third one. I have to look into this. Maybe I can look into it today. But the third Pratibimba-bhakti-ābhāsa was Viparit Vastu Bhakti Buddhi Janita Bhakti-ābhāsa. And then it mentions the Panchopasaks, and it said that the Panchopasaks are also, they're also kind of the same as the first one. Like their bhakti is also covered by Nirvishesh Gyan. I guess they have a different method. So it's a separate category. They have a different method. But then he also explained that the process of yoga and trying to realize Paramatma is also in that third category. So it seems like there are 2 in number 3. There's the Panchopasaks and then also the yogis trying to aiming towards realizing Paramatma. But maybe I didn't understand correctly. I don't know. I have to look at that. If anybody knows the answer to that. Anyway, I think I just need to read it one more time and then it'll become clear. I'll try to do that. And then we can recap everything that we read today briefly tomorrow. All right. Jai Shri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Madan Mohan Ju Ki Jai, Jai Shri Gurudev Ki Jai, Jai Shri Param Gurudev Ki Jai, Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jai Shri Rupanu Varga Ki Jai, Swapasha Ji Gaur Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopikan Ki Jai, Shri Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Jai Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Jai Bhakti-tattva-viveka ki Jai. Jai Śrīla Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura ki Jai. Harinama Sankirtan ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Jai Śrīla Rupa Goswami Pad ki Jai. Jai Śrīla Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu ki Jai. Jai Shinitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat pranams, Krishna Mai Didi, Chatamai Mataji, Nari Hari Prabhu, Bhavatarani Mataji, Anadi Krishna Prabhu, Gokuleshwari Didi, and there are 13 people today on YouTube and Facebook. I only see the names of those who wrote comments, so I'll just, I'm not ignoring any of you, I don't see your names unless you write a comment. So, Haribol Brinda Didi, Prajumna Prabhu, Mantramurti Mataji, Vangshiwala Prabhu, Raseshwari Mataji, Indira Mataji, my dear brother Krishna Murari, Rohini Nandan, Ganga Mataji, Mitra Brinda Didi, oh, Shripad Bhaktivedanta, Sajan Maharaj, Haribol, Dandavat Pranams Maharaj, Fuleshwari Didi, and Rukmini Didi, and everybody else. Also pranams to all the devotees watching in the future. Haribol. Chatamai Mataji, you wanna, I see your mic is open.
Haribol, I thank you. Thank you.
One second, my volume's down. I can hear you now, yeah.
I'm just amazed that people would use factors of bhakti to achieve an impersonalist goal, and they don't even see the value of it. They don't even see that that's the end in itself, and they would use this as a convenience for worship. That's wow. How off. There's so many ways to go off on this path.
And I think it's like the majority of, I mean, I would be interested to, like, I don't think it's possible to do this, but I'd be interested to see like a pie chart and like of like how many with just general Hindus, how many of them are their aim is liberation,
Yeah.
and how many of them are their aim is heavenly pleasures and enjoyment and all that. I guess
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the ratio would be between gyan and karma, but I do think probably like 90%, 99% is aiming towards either like, you know, one of those, either gyan or karma. You know, like I think it's very rare to find
Wow.
like it's. I mean, there's that verse. What is that verse? Muktanam api siddhanam narayana parayana sudurlabha. What is that? That verse like
Sudurlabha. Yeah.
yeah,
Sudurlabha. Very
how
rare.
rare it is to find anybody who's worshiping Krishna that's actually a devotee of Krishna, that's doing their practice solely to please Krishna, not with having any kind of material aim. It's extremely rare,
So
and
we really,
it's only really taught in these. As far as I know, it's only taught in one of these four sampradayas, Vaishnava sampradayas. So.
wow, it's quite a realization, and it makes you just we need to keep checking in on ourselves and see if our motivation is pure.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the whole purpose of reading this book,
I
so that
know.
we can get more clarity on what is the real thing, and we can also get more clarity on um, where we're going off, and like because lots of times we think that we're engaging in bhakti, but it's not actually bhakti, and so that's why we constantly need to read this, hear these words of our acharyas, and they're constantly fine-tuning our ability to detect what is not the real thing.
So beautiful. Thanks for suggesting this book.
I'm so grateful myself.
Well,
I'm just seeing a couple comments from Rukmini Didi. Oh, and I accidentally skipped Rohini Nandan Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams and Fuleshwari Didi. Haribol. Sorry. What is Rukmini Didi saying? She's saying, I was in a yoga philosophy class, and unfortunately, they had a Mayavadi to summarize the Bhagavad Gita. He said that there are only two paths in the Bhagavad Gita. Gyan and karma. He completely dismissed the whole middle section of Bhagavad Gita, which is like a third of Bhagavad Gita. And actually more than a third, because even in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita and even at the very end, it explained its bhakti is all throughout. But he completely ignored all of that and just said Gyan and karma are the only two paths explained in Bhagavad Gita. It's absurd. And he said that bhakti was just a type of karma. Wow, and probably a lot of people not in within the four sampradayas probably believe that bhakti is just another form of karma. It's just pious activity. All right. All right. So, if does anybody have anything else they want to mention before we end the stream today? All right. See you all tomorrow to read about Chaya Bhakti-ābhāsa. This will feel even more, I think, yeah, more relevant. Yeah, because this is more directly, I think, like when we're engaging in something that's connected to bhakti, but it's not bhakti. Yeah, this will, yeah. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. All right, Haribo, Dandavat Pranams, everybody.